Hello there, Atheist Jr. here, your friend and humble narrator, and I'm joined here today by my friend Mark Reed, and we are going to be looking at this article that for some reason is in Newsweek. I don't know why, but it's by Stephen Meyer of the Discovery Institute, and it's an opinion piece, of course, which is a good thing. And it's called How Science Stopped Backing Atheists and Started Pointing Back to God. So, Mark, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you, AJ. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, just I haven't seen this article. I haven't looked at it, but yeah, already feeling a bit a bit tenuous about the. And yeah, luckily it is an opinion piece, but you've sort of got to wonder how this makes it into mainstream news. But let's have a look. Let's check it out and see what they've got to bring to us, I guess.
Yeah, I have a feeling you've already seen the arguments that are in here. Uh,
Okay.
So I'm going to read this first paragraph and then skip ahead a little bit because a lot of this isn't really that relevant. So it just says headlines lately have not been encouraging for the faithful. A Gallup poll shows that the percentage of Americans who believe in God has fallen to 81%, a drop of 10% over the last decade and an all-time low. This accelerating trend is especially pronounced among young adults. According to a Pew Research poll, 18 to 29-year-olds are disproportionately represented among so-called nones, atheists, agnostics, and the religiously unaffiliated. Now,
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
that this is a good thing. This is clearly a
well.
good thing.
It's a bit weird here because when they say God, they're including things like Allah and Hindu gods and any gods, right? It's not just because it's not just Christianity that's fallen to 81%. It's all religions. So they're kind of already he's kind of going, sort of conflating the numbers a little. Um, and yeah, that it is, and they're very upset by that young people just aren't believing in the supernatural anymore. In Australia, where I am, it's Christians are less than 40%, and actually nuns in Australia are up to over 40%. So we are technically now absolutely a secular country by any metric, including sort of populum that you want to. So yeah, he's right, and yeah, I do agree. It is a good thing. I think it's great, but it makes them very upset because they have that thing of give me a child and you'll have the man basically, and they put a lot of stock in convincing the youth and keeping them in the religion for life, not allowing them to go out and see what other worldviews have to offer. You'd think that'd be a good thing, right? Go out, try different ideas and different perspectives and see which one offers some sort of benefit. They hate that.
Yeah, I was wondering if the Gallup poll that it referenced was talking about all different religions, but I checked it and it said that in the 1960s, this same poll was answered yes by 98% of Americans. So it would have to be referring to multiple religions to get that high of an answer.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. It is 81% is well. Let me see if I can find something to bring it up. It's a Gallup poll. He doesn't reference the
it's
poll, but
it's linked in the article, I think.
it is okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I sent you the link for it, but and if I can get on my soapbox for a second, there are Christian nationalists who like to claim that the United States was founded as a Christian nation when really it wasn't. It was founded as a nation where one religion would not be shown favoritism by the government or the laws. At least that was the idea. And I think they like to point out the line in the Constitution or that says, one nation under God, uh, or
Yep.
that we're everybody under is created equal under their God. But the key word in that statement is under their God. It's not the fact that it mentions a creator or God. It's the fact that it says that they're all equal under their own God, not just the Christian God or a different God. It doesn't matter what religion you are or what lack of religion you have. You should be treated equal in the eyes of the law.
Yes.
So we're a religiously neutral country. That, at least that was the idea when it was created. I don't know if it's still that way, but the idea that the United States was created as a Christian nation is just a myth that's been made up by these people.
Okay, so this Gallup poll, basically the question that he's referring to, I believe anyway, I do apologize if I'm misrepresenting him, but the question was, do you believe in God? And 81% you said yes. So it didn't even try to define in any way what that God is. So I doubt it's any reference to Christianity. There was an earlier question in the poll which sort of says, what is your religious preference? Are you Protestant, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, etc.? And 35% were Protestant, 10% non-Christian, and 22% Catholic. So of course that only adds up to what, 45, 67%. So that 81 is definitely not all Christians.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it says pastors and other religious leaders have attributed this trend to many factors: young people being raised outside the church, and unfamiliarity with liturgy and church culture, even COVID-19. And I think that definitely makes sense, because I think the generation gap between young adults and their parents definitely shows that the younger people don't feel as much of a need to attend church as their parents did, especially with the invention and the popularization of the internet, which has created a much easier way for people to meet each other and create communities.
Right.
Before people met each other at church,
Yeah. I'm struggling to think how COVID-19 could have significantly sort of, I suppose, if you can't get to church because
right.
you're, sick. Yeah, okay, no, that's fair enough. So they're basically saying that it's a social difficulty, and there's easier ways to socially meet people. I'm not 100% convinced that's the case, but it could be a factor, yeah.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of reasons that we could go over, but that's not really super relevant to this article, because this is the claim that the article is making. It says, we found another answer in our national survey. So I guess this is the Discovery Institute's survey to probe the underlying reasons for this growing unbelief, a misunderstanding of science. And people aren't leaving the church because they don't understand science. I think it's the opposite is true.
Yeah, I think we're becoming more and more educated in science as time goes on. Perhaps not the science that the Discovery Institute wants to promote, which is pseudoscience. Because, I mean, Stephen Meyer, that did this article, is well known for his pseudoscientific beliefs. They're things that are refuted by scientists. They're things that would never make it through peer review. And he's sort of famous for his pseudoscience. Even though, of course, he believes that it's actual science, but how we get this into a mainstream news thing is beyond me, even as an opinion piece, because the only thing that Stephen Meyer is acknowledged to be an expert in is philosophy of religion and pseudoscience.
Right. And of course, he wouldn't defend intelligent design as science in court. He didn't show up to the Dover trial.
Correct. Yeah.
Perhaps surprisingly, our survey discovered that the perceived message of science has played a leading role in the loss of faith. We found that scientific theories about the unguided evolution of life have, in particular, led more people to reject belief in God than worries about suffering, disease, or death. It also showed that 65% of self-described atheists and 43% of agnostics believe the findings of science generally make the existence of God less probable.
Sure.
I mean, the thing with evolution and the Bible, I think the only way, or one of the ways that I could see that conflicting with each other, is if you're going to take Genesis, the first 2 chapters, literally, then yes, the evolution of man having ancestors that, or sharing common ancestry with chimpanzees and other apes does conflict with humans being created fully like modern humans and looking like modern humans.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. It's just, it may not be the case that evolution or understanding evolution caused you to not believe in the Bible. But if you're a honest atheist or an honest agnostic, you're saying, well, it's way less probable that it was, that humanity was designed. And if you give them the question, well, do you think evolution makes it less probable? Well, yeah, it's a evidence against design, right? It doesn't mean that that's what's caused you to leave the church or become an atheist or anything of the sort. So I think there's a bit of correlation is not causation here, right? That it isn't that evolution caused people to not believe in God, but it is evidence against it. Does that make sense? Like, he's sort of trying to say it's complete, it's evolution. 65% of people don't believe in God because of evolution. That might not be the case. I think he's conflating with the numbers there, using the statistics to sort of go, oh, well, evolution is the reason why people don't believe in God. Well, not necessarily. It may just be that people don't believe in God and believe in evolution, and that evolution makes it less probable that special creation occurred.
Yeah. So it is easy to see why this perception has proliferated. In recent years, many scientists have emerged as celebrity spokesmen for atheism. And then it lists a bunch of them. It says, and others have published popular books arguing that science renders belief in God unnecessary or implausible. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if at the bottom there is no purpose, no design, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. And Richard Dawkins is the one who said that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true that there's a lot of famous scientists who have become also atheist activists, basically. And I think that's interesting that on one side, you have people with legitimate science educations. And then on the other side, you have people like Stephen Meyer.
Yes. Yeah. And Ken Hovind, and,
right.
There's a long line of them lining up. There's a whole ton of people. But the thing about it is that I don't think these people, maybe Bill Nye is a bit of an exception because he's technically an engineer who went into science communication, but people like Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss, the goal that they went into was not to bring people to science kind of thing. Not their main focus, because they are, Dawkins is a evolutionary biologist, Lawrence Krauss is a physicist. And I mean, Stephen Hawking, he wasn't, he's not one of the people that you'd go to get people into science. These are actual scientists who are interested in finding the truth about reality. Their main focus isn't being a celebrity or, like a lot of the pastors and preachers that we see, of getting a community and, making moral proclamations. That's not what they're into. They're just into doing science.
And Bill Nye is a weird example, because Bill Nye is certainly somebody who's helped people get into science at an entry level. I mean, I watched his videos in the 4th grade when I was a kid and loved them, but he's really not a spokesman for atheism. I mean,
correct.
In the debate he did against Ken Ham, he really did not, argue against the Bible being true in a really strong way, which is, I would have liked to see that, but I understand that that's not really his thing,
Well, I don't think Dawkins and Krauss are spokespeople for atheism through their own design either. I think they just sort of fell into that because they advocated for the science, and the science just happens to be conflicting with the religion. If you want to point out Matt Delahunty or some of the other atheists out there who are sort of more into the philosophical side of atheism, I would say, yeah, they're definitely celebrity atheists. But these people are more celebrity scientists than atheists. But I guess anybody opposed to religion is automatically a spokesperson for atheism, whether that's really their goal or whether their goal is to present the science which happens to conflict with your religion. So I'm a bit cynical about that one, but yeah, fair enough.
Yet between message and reality, there is a major disconnect. Over the last century, important scientific discoveries have dramatically challenged science-based atheism, which I've never heard of. And
No.
three in particular now tell a more God-friendly story. So we're finally going to get into the actual points he's trying to make in the article.
So do you practice science-based atheism, AJ? Is that you, science-based atheism?
Well, no, I don't think so, because atheism doesn't really relate to science by itself.
Right.
Now, I do think that there's a correlation between people who are atheists or atheist activists and people who have an interest in science. There tends to be a crossover, but I don't think that they're really tied together in a way that this article is trying to say that they are, I mean, there are a lot of atheists who I know an atheist who doesn't think the Big Bang Theory is true. And
right. It's not necessarily the case that an atheist will rely on science. As you said, there's some atheists that believe that aliens created everything, and that's not really scientific either. So I think, and see, some atheists aren't even naturalists either. I mean, I'm not a philosophical naturalist. So, yeah, I would happily admit that science informs my atheism, but I wouldn't say it's based in science. It's more based upon critical reasoning but as you say, some people that are atheists aren't basing it in critical reasoning. They're just basing it on maybe personal intuition or something like that. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You don't have to adhere to methodological naturalism or science and be an atheist. So that's clearly untrue.
Yeah.
Science-based atheism.
I mean, I think you should, but I'm a
pragmatist. Same here.
Personally. Yep. I'm a pragmatist. Yep. And the way I see it, I think that science has solved so many more of the world's problems than religion has. Yes. And I don't tend to see very much value in religion, even though there are things that you can point to that are positives. The community-based aspect, but like I said earlier, there are things that have replaced that. Yeah. And I think that there is so much more value to science and education in science than there is in clinging to outdated religious beliefs that, the pragmatic value to me is obviously way higher.
Yeah, and there's a lot of harm comes with religion as well. You do get offshoots that have very dangerous beliefs, and without sort of I mean, they claim to have objective morality, but without some sort of moral structure to bring them back in, they can do all kinds of crazy things. Extremists, anti-LGBTQ people, just a whole litany of really dangerous stuff. Preventing condoms in Africa was just horrible, and that the Catholic Church was responsible for that one. So it does a lot of harm and provides no benefit that we couldn't get from a secular source. I don't know of a benefit apart from, people do feel good or superior being part of that, but that's no different than any community on the face of the planet.
Right. So now we're going to really get into his first reason.
So it's scientific evidence. Here we go.
Yeah. So it says, first, scientists have discovered that the physical universe had a beginning. This finding, supported by observational astronomy and theoretical physics, contradicts the expectations of scientific atheists who long portray the universe as eternal and self-existent, and therefore in no need of an external creator. So I would dispute the first sentence, basically.
Yeah, well, So it's been, I think the current trends is people do, or scientists do think there was an origin point. But when you like at what Planck time, since the presumed point is the furthest we go back, we can't say that for sure.
That's a
It's
good
just
point.
one hypothesis out of many. So once you hit that Planck time, and physics just breaks down at that point, you can't sort of examine what happened before that. We don't for certain know. We think it did have a beginning, but we're not sure, because when physics breaks down and space-time breaks down, saying beginning before time existed, that's a problem there, because you can't have a beginning before time. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure he's on, he doesn't have a citation or anything like that. I don't think anybody is claiming to know the state of the origin point of the universe. So I think that's a very tenuous claim he's making there.
Right. I mean, it doesn't say which scientist discovered this, or doesn't have a link to when this happened or what his source is, like you said. And I don't know what observational astronomy is. I haven't really heard of that. I think that's, you could just say astronomy. You don't, it's like Ken Ham does a similar thing with like talking about, I forget what term he used, but like observational evidence and historical evidence, something like that.
Right.
And scientific atheists, that this contradicted the expectation of scientific atheists. Like who, which ones? Like, who are you talking about? This is so vague.
Right.
And I mean, this is just a lot of conjecture claiming that it was scientific atheists, we don't know which ones, who long portrayed the universe as eternal and self-existent. I think he's mistaking the universe being viewed as being a steady state for a long time, which was refuted exactly by Einstein's discoveries of the cosmological constant, and the fact that space-time was expanding, and that rate was also increasing, which I think is going to come up later. But
well, that's Hubble that really found out that the universe was expanding due to redshift. But yeah, I mean, I think Hubble was a theist. So it isn't just scientific. See, this is the thing they set up. They set up as, oh, well, all of these things like Big Bang and, evolution and things are atheist ideas. And they're not. There's a large majority of Christians believe in them too. It's not just Christians believe in one thing and atheists believe in another. All of these scientific principles that he's alluding to are also believed by Christians, just not young earth Christians.
Right. Well, this is the same thing that Kent Hovind does with the geological column, is that he acts like it was, everybody believed the Bible. And then it was non-Christians who came up, that it was one non-Christian that came up with the geologic column, when really it was many people, and many of them were Bible believers that helped develop the geological column. Charles Liddell is the one person who blames it on.
Bible believers at the time. That's the thing. The Bible was the mainstream philosophical stance at the time. So it's hardly surprising that Christians came up with this. Anyway, I get what you're saying. It's sort of, he's sort of putting people that believe in science into an other camp from Christianity, sort of doing a no true Christian. So if you believe in this stuff, you're not really a Christian, because Christians don't believe in this Big Bang and evolution and things like that. Sorry, Stephen, hate to break it to you, many Christians do. In fact, the majority of them do.
Evidence for what scientists call the Big Bang has instead confirmed the expectations of traditional theists. Nobel laureate Arno Penzias, who helped make a key discovery supporting the Big Bang theory, has noted the obvious connection between its affirmation of a cosmic beginning and the concept of divine creation. The best data we have are exactly what I would have predicted, and had I nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses and the Bible as a whole. So this guy was just one of the people who helped to discover the cosmic microwave background radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And that really didn't decide whether or not the Big Bang meant the universe had a beginning. It doesn't mean that that's
Right.
true. And, this is one person. And just because he said that doesn't really back up his argument, Stephen Meyer's argument here. It's just a quote mine, I think.
I think so too. And the question has to be asked, like, how traditional a theist are we looking at here? Because famously, Christians hated the heliocentric model and absolutely went for a geocentric model. And famously, at the pain of death, threatened Copernicus with retracting, or was it Galileo? I think it was Copernicus. Anyway, they threatened a scientist to retract their book because they suggested that the sun was the center, the earth went around the sun instead of vice versa. Look, Christians have been wrong on every single step up till now. And science is tentative. It doesn't say, hey, we know there was a beginning. It will say, hey, the idea that the universe is expanding from at one point suggests there was a beginning. But we don't know that for sure. And there could well have been. There could very well have been. It doesn't automatically make every claim that these people make the truth, because they resisted heliocentric. They resisted the whole idea of the Big Bang.
Yeah, I think it was Galileo that the Catholic Church put him on. They put him on house arrest for publishing material that said that the heliocentric theory was correct, that the sun was at the center of the universe, or the galaxy, the solar system, sorry, and instead of the Earth, geocentric theory. But in here it says that there's an obvious connection between a cosmic beginning being true and the concept of divine creation, but I don't really see what the link is between those two things. And even if there was such an obvious link, that doesn't mean that it's Stephen Meyer's version of God that created the physical universe.
Sure.
This is just an assertion that he's making, multiple assertions really, and I don't see it as being an obvious connection.
Well, it's kind of funny, because if the universe was in a static state that existed for all time, he could easily turn around and go, well, look, it's a static state. That shows that God designed it that way because it had no beginning. Something had to come. You could make an argument from any angle this came at. I don't see this as particularly compelling for a God at all. But, I don't know. I don't see the clergy embracing Big Bang like he says. I think there was a lot of pushback against it.
Right. Second, discoveries from physics about the structure of the universe reinforce this theistic conclusion. Since the 1960s, physicists have determined that the fundamental physical laws and parameters of our universe are finely tuned against all odds to make our universe capable of hosting life. Even slight alterations of many independent factors, such as the strength of gravitational or electromagnetic attraction, or the initial arrangement of matter and energy in the universe, would have rendered life impossible. Scientists have discovered that we live in a kind of Goldilocks universe, or what Luke Barnes called an extremely fortunate universe.
So the fine-tuning argument, essentially. Yeah. In the 1960s, we thought that there was a lot less probable than we think now, because we've sort of found out that life, since 1960s, we've found bacteria that can live in nuclear waste kind of thing, and extremophiles that love living in incredibly extreme environments. So in the 1960s, we thought that life could only exist in a very, very narrow band of environments. And we found out that life, not humans, not mammals, not animals, but life in general can exist in some incredibly extreme environments. So that's kind of changed. the whole idea of a fine-tuned universe is that we don't know what would have existed because we've only got one universe. We don't know what would have existed if another universe had different universal constants. Maybe it would have collapsed upon itself. Maybe it wouldn't have existed. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe a different form of life would have arisen. We can't tell. Nobody can tell. So the whole idea that he wants to say, hey, life wouldn't have existed if these constants were changed. How does he know that?
Right. And like you said, the reason that, the place he's getting the phrase Goldilocks from is sort of the Goldilocks zone that the Earth is in. And the reason we call it that is because we know how Mercury is not capable of hosting life like on Earth because it's so close to the sun and it's like scorched. And that other planets like Pluto are so far away from the sun that they're covered in ice, basically, and they have ice rings. And but even the habitable zone that the Earth is in is large enough to where the Earth could be a lot closer or farther away from the sun, and we'd still be able to support life like we do now.
Yeah. Or maybe it wouldn't be life like we have now.
Right.
It would be a different form of life with very, very different attributes to it. My whole point is we can't tell because life seems to be able to adapt incredibly well. In fact, there's bacteria that you can survive in space. They shut down and go dormant, but they survive, and that's been proven. That this whole idea of life can only survive in this narrow band is completely false. It's something that we erroneously thought. And if anything, the universe seems fine-tuned to produce black holes because the natural state of matter is to attract to one another. More matter eventually builds up to a singularity. It seems to be the optimal state for matter to be in, or the end product of matter to be in. I noticed that no explanation for God wanting to create so many black holes in the universe is ever given. It's just something he seems to be doing on the sly out there somewhere for no apparent reason, and religion has no comment on it.
Yeah, and another problem here is that just saying to make a universe capable of hosting life, well, what do you mean when you say life? Are you talking about simple unicellular life, or are you talking about humans? Are you talking about complex multicellular forms of life that can communicate and build rocket ships? I mean, because there's a big distinction between those two things. And saying the universe is finely tuned to be able to support life at all, it seems like when we talk about the fine-tuning argument, I think what they mean is that, life like on Earth can exist with biodiversity, but the universe is incredibly hostile to life. Like space is cold and full of radiation, and or you can get burnt up from starlight if you're facing a star like the sun. I mean, most life on Earth would die within seconds or a minute being in space, and that's most of the universe, or black holes. So that's not really fine-tuned to support life.
No,
it's sort of the opposite.
Yeah, I would agree.
Now, surprisingly, many physicists have concluded that this improbable fine-tuning points to a cosmic fine-tuner. Of course, as former Cambridge astrophysicist Sir Fred Hoyle argued, a common-sense interpretation of the data suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with the physics to make life possible.
Well, I mean, I'd argue that common sense may be common, but it's sometimes not that sensical. It doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. Sometimes things are not intuitive. They're anti-intuitive. They're exactly the opposite to what you would think they would be. And here's the thing. The Earth isn't even that hospitable to humans without technology, for instance. It's pretty, like, you've got deserts, you've got tundra, you've got environments where a human will die without certain technology to help them, like huts to make shade, or furs to make warmth. It isn't even that, the Earth isn't even that fine-tuned to us. Most of it's underwater. We can't survive underwater. We drown. This whole idea that the Earth has been fine-tuned to humans, quite frankly, is not common sense to me. And if we look at it, like you said, it seems common sense that the universe hasn't been fine-tuned for life. If anything, it's been fine-tuned to destroy it, because there isn't, we're not capable of putting life out there into the universe, and it will just die. It will, or in the case of bacteria, go dormant and wait for better conditions.
Right. And I mean, common sense tells me that when I go outside and see the horizon, to think that the whole planet is flat.
Right.
Even when you get into a jet that can go incredibly high above the clouds, to where the sky gets dark, you can still barely see the curvature of the Earth. It's very difficult to see the curvature without actually getting a photo from a satellite.
Yeah, you'd have to measure it, really. You could take a photo and then measure the curvature, but it's very hard to see with the naked eye. Yeah, I would agree.
And it's some pretty complicated maths to even do that.
Yeah, it's anti-intuitive. Yeah.
And if your argument is, if you need a quote from Fred Hoyle to back up your argument, I feel like that kind of kind of speaks against it, because Fred Hoyle was kind of crazy.
Yes. I don't remember exactly, but Fred Hoyle believed in some very strange stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Third, molecular biology has revealed the presence in living cells of an exquisite world of informational nanotechnology. These include digital code in DNA and RNA, tiny, intricately constructed molecular machines which vastly exceed our own digital high technology in their storage and transmission capabilities. And even Richard Dawkins has acknowledged that the machine code of the genes is uncannily computer-like, implying it would seem that the activity of a master programmer at work in the origin of life. At the very least, the discoveries of modern biology are not what anyone would have expected from blind materialistic processes. I mean, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think they are what we'd expect from evolution, or a what's called a bottom-up design rather than a top-down design.
So I've heard this argument before about nanotechnology within our DNA, or some type of digital code within the DNA and RNA. I mean, there are machines, you could call them tiny molecular machines, that do different things inside our DNA and RNA. But again, I don't understand how you're connecting that to a master programmer. And again, there's always that second leap between that, a designer, and your specific designer, that you never hear religious people talk about. And it really annoys me.
Right. And nobody is going to say, hey, DNA and a computer code look nothing alike now and nothing to do with one another. Kind of say that, yeah, they do look uncanny. They have uncanny similarities, but they also have some massive differences as well. Same with these molecular machines. Like, we can say, hey, they look like machines that we would use in engineering, and they're uncannily similar, but there's some massive differences there as well. So sort of just equating one with the other. And I was talking about this, sorry, I did touch on this and sort of forgot where I was at, but sort of the difference between top-down design and bottom-up design is that top-down, you design everything from the top, like you get your blueprint, and it's usually very streamlined, very simple, and trying to be as efficient as possible. Bottom-up design is where you have multiple different systems all working independently, and you kind of smush them together to all work with one another. And you get a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of problems occurring, because these systems were not designed from the top down to work with one another. And that's what we see from organic systems, is sort of a bottom-up. You get systems all working independently. They sort of then to be more to achieve things, or to, I guess that's the wrong word, to operate, they become sort of work with one another, but you get these problems in them, and that's what we see. So to equate one with the other, to equate DNA and computer code is terrible. That is completely, there's some massive differences between them. I think that's absolutely terrible. To equate molecular machines with human machines is terrible as well. I don't know any molecular biologist that would sort of say, hey, they're just like machines. No.
Right. I mean, one of the differences between a computer code, like something you might write for JavaScript or C++, is that, and DNA, is that DNA code, nucleotide sequences, they're redundant. So you can have changes in that sequence, multiple different character changes from mutation that have no effect at all on the organism because they're just neutral. They don't change anything. But a lot of times, if you're writing code, with text, if you have one bracket or caret or period, it's in the wrong place or gets deleted, it can break your code or it can break a major feature in it and really change a lot of things. So I think that that's one major difference.
And not only that, the DNA is it is optimal for it to change and mutate. That is the optimal way that organisms can survive, because a organism whose DNA does not change quickly becomes victims of their circumstance, of their environment, because they can't change with a changing environment. So and sort of, if you copy computer code, you'll get an exact replica. If you copy DNA or you replicate DNA, it will vastly change over time. And anybody that's bred any kind of animal will know this. That's just what it does.
Right. And this last sentence, that the discoveries of modern biology are not what anyone would have expected from blind materialistic processes. I mean, how could you claim that? You don't know what every person thinks or would expect. That's just another assertion. And because I don't think that the biodiversity that we see on Earth is something that couldn't come from a blind materialistic process, because you can have systems that start out, very simply and have rules, but don't have any sort of design in them. They just follow a set program, and you can get really complex systems from that.
Sure. And they've done simulations to show that, sort of these simulations which are not trying to achieve any goal. They just try to survive and develop, and that's what happens. We can simulate these things. I was speaking to Dr. J, who that was a while ago. He does simulations to simulate life, and sort of they want to say, oh, but that's not real life. It's like, yeah, but we're simulating what would happen from these materialistic processes. And I also want to say, sorry, AJ, I also want to say I really object to the whole idea of blind here. You can sort of, I feel like it's a conflation to link deterministic processes like evolution that is shaped by natural selection, which is a deterministic process. It's determined by the environment around it and how one thing leading to another, and traits being selected because the animal survives that has traits suitable for that environment, to blind. I think that's a real excuse me, I think that's a real loaded word there. He's sort of say chance without saying chance, right? Yeah.
That's just what I was thinking, is that it's a misnomer, and it's quite annoying, like the way that creationists use the word chance, because it's not chance that animals with thicker fur can survive in a cold environment better than animals that have thin fur. That's not correct. A blind process or a chance process. That follows an easily understandable logic.
Well, there is chance in the process. We kind of call that genetic drift, and that's factored in, but they sort of say, oh, well, it's all chance. And it's like, no, genetic drift isn't a big factor in it. We do factor it in because it does happen, but it's not a huge factor in natural selection. So yeah, I just, what does blind mean anyway?
I think it just means that there's not a God behind the process deciding these things directly.
I think that's a callback to what Dawkins said. It was blind, pitiless indifference of the universe kind of thing, which I don't, I think that's really him sort of using those words as Dawkins didn't actually mean it. I think his referral to blind was just, yeah, as you said, like a creator didn't exist, so there was nobody overseeing the process.
Right.
Whereas I feel he's using it here to say chance on, yeah, it's, I don't know, I just don't like the word.
Right. And I think in evolution, there's this idea that the body plan of organisms is plastic to the environment. So it's going to follow something that is not necessarily conscious, like nature isn't actively conscious, but it definitely has a sort of routing of decisions that it does make, things that it favors, or things like natural selection. That's basically what it is. So while it's blind in sort of the human sense that, but even humans can control nature and affect which species live and die based on our decisions. I mean, if you just look at the environmental movement and deforestation and, building of coal plants and stuff like that. So all of these decisions and everything that happens in nature or to nature is going to affect animal populations and probably how they evolve. So it's definitely not completely blind.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. We can affect, but evolution doesn't need humans. And there's some weird stuff that happens as well. Like a question is often asked, like, why does evolution keep producing crabs? Like, it seems to love this design plan of, the sort of multi-limbs with claws kind of thing, because you see convergent evolution with, say, scorpions, for instance, as crabs, as, this design plan. It's just because it's efficient and effective, and it is adaptable to a lot of different situations. But we seem to see it a lot. It's just that there's certain things that adapt with certain environments way better than others. And so we see them come up time and time again.
Okay, so this is, I believe, the last paragraph, and it says, all this underscores a growing disparity between public perceptions of the message of science and what scientific evidence actually shows. Far from pointing to blind, pitiless indifference, the great discoveries of the last century point to the exquisite design of life and the universe, and arguably to an intelligent creator behind it all. It's definitely arguable. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I would definitely underscore that arguable, but I think that it's arguable that it's design of life anyway, and not the evolution of life, which 97% of scientists agree to. And this whole the creationist movement, and I won't say just creationists, the young earth creationist movement have been on this diatribe of more and more scientists are coming over to our side. It's just not true. It's a lie. I'm really sorry to all those young earth creationists out there, but it is just what they're saying and not actually true. Very little scientists are coming over to the young earth creationist side. Sorry.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you.
Yeah,
And
it's just,
I feel like there are so many questions that I would ask them if they're going to say that, okay, that there was an intelligent creator behind all this, then why is it that like 98% of species have gone extinct? That doesn't seem very intelligent in the design.
Sure.
That so many would go extinct.
Well, yeah, and I mean, some theists say that the process was designed, but then he just left it in motion doing what it does, and they still believe in evolution. But I want to make really clear that Stephen C. Meyer is not in this camp. And yeah, that's a very valid question. Absolutely, AJ, I 100% agree. Why design all these creatures just to make them a dead end, like just all die out? Why not just not design them in the first place?
Right. There's a ton of questions. Like, I asked Standing for Truth when I was on a live call with him one time. So if God designed human women to have pain in pregnancy, then what was the process of giving birth like before that? Did they just have huge hips? What did they have natural painkillers? Like, if
Right.
God has a design, then shouldn't it not change? But it does seem to change in the Bible. I
Right.
don't know. There are just
Sure.
so many questions. But
Yeah, and sort of the whole idea about the ark and that animals ate vegetation before the ark and then meat afterwards. It's like, well, why didn't you just design all of the animals to eat plants indefinitely? How did they change? Why did they change? What sense does it make that yeah, that's one that's always baffled me. And I mean, I love Amy Newman's one that's sort of, well, why were men designed with nipples?
yeah, well,
Because
it,
yeah, it's
it points to their fine-tuning argument, because if the universe is finely tuned, then why would the universe be expanding? And why would that rate of expansion be increasing? Shouldn't it be staying the same? And there's so many different things that are changing in our universe, because the universe is
sure.
very chaotic,
Yeah.
that it doesn't seem fine-tuned to me. And I really don't think that his points here backed up his main hypothesis or thesis, whatever it was. I'm confused about if it was that people are leaving the church because they don't understand science, or that science equals that God exists. It was kind of muddled.
It was
I
a
don't know.
bit muddled, yeah. And another thing about the universe is that I remember back in 2019 there was an asteroid called OK 2019 that whizzed by the Earth, closer to us than the moon. It's the closest recorded asteroid thing. In the universe terms, it'd be like a bullet grazing your sleeve kind of thing. It was that close. So was that fine-tuned? Is that a warning shot from God? Maybe. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it seems really weird to have such dangerous objects whizzing around the universe and potentially hitting Earth, and occasionally are hitting Earth, just nothing lately of significance. How is that fine-tuned?
Right. Well, I believe that scientists had been able to track down an asteroid that didn't hit Earth. It passed it. And then just a few days later, I could have this backwards, but there was an asteroid that they didn't see coming that landed in the sky above Russia and had such a huge impact that it broke out glass windows and a lot of people got hurt.
Yeah.
And they could see it all over the different cities. There are a lot of YouTube videos of it, but they couldn't track that one at all. They totally missed it.
Right. Some are dark, some don't have enough reflection to track, and we can only observe a certain amount of the sky. Asteroids and meteorites, I should say meteorites, hit the Earth all the time. We seem to have been lucky so far, but the dinosaurs, of course, weren't so lucky, I guess.
Yeah. Well, did you have any final comments you wanted to make about this article?
No, it just seems to be, an opinion piece in the strongest sense of the word. But sort of, I guess the only thought I have is that more and more I see opinion pieces dressed up as science. And just, an opinion piece like this isn't science. It's not scientifically backed, because it has Center for Science in the name of his, institute or whatever. Doesn't really lend anything to it. So yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on to
my pleasure.
review this with me. But
yeah, my pleasure.
I'd like to read this comment before we sort of sign off. And it says, I'm glad to read this as an opinion piece. Nothing in this article suggests the existence of a godlike entity. Neither in biology nor physics nor any of the other sciences has there ever been confirmation of the existence of God or gods. While these beings may exist, no hard evidence in support of their existence has been forthcoming. If such evidence existed, rather than these periodic wish pieces or opinion pieces, authors would simply publish the links to the hard evidence instead of expounding on why they feel the findings of science support their hopes. And that pretty much sums up how I feel about this.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just the case that a lot of these people, they'll read things in papers make their own conclusions and then claim the papers support them. And that's another thing that sort of gets my goat, because it's misrepresenting the paper. And I don't really care what your conclusion about the data is. I want to know what the objective conclusion that science can point to. So yeah, yeah, he has no hard evidence of this. It is just an opinion piece. It's opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fair. I mean, that's his opinion. I don't know why Newsweek published this, but
it seems a little odd. Yes, it does. Yeah. I mean,
and this is recent too. It was just published in July, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're going to end it there, but I really appreciate, you coming on to do this with me, Mark, because I tried writing some notes about this article myself, and it just made my brain hurt. So I sort of needed some backup on this one.
Yeah, no worries. It always helps to have someone bounce stuff off and, have I always find conversations better than just, giving a speech for myself, I must admit. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
But I will,
always a pleasure, AJ. Always fun to have a chat with you.
Yeah, I will put your channel link and any other links you want me to put in the description. And my channel just hit 6,000 subscribers, which is great.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And so let me know what you guys watching think of this article. Were you convinced by his arguments or not so much? And I'll just see you guys in the next video. So thank you, Mark, and peace out.
Thank you.